We are consistently told that grooming is not happening. We are told by the mainstream media that it's fake news, a right-wing talking point, and schools are not grooming your kids. Well, I can show you that they are. And this doesn't mean that every single teacher is. It means that many of them are. And there's ample evidence. But presumably for tribal reasons, or perhaps malicious reasons, the media just lies about what's going on. The story right now is that Paramount Plus, among many others, sponsored a drag event where a child dances on stage for money. I think at one point the kid does a cartwheel. Now, of course, many on the left and many liberals are saying it is but harmless fun. It is people cheering and dancing. It's a stage show. It is not stripping. It is not grooming, so they say, but it is. It is. And look, we can try and figure out all of the reasons in the world that people on the left want this to happen, and everybody has their theories. The reality is, it is happening. It doesn't matter what your opinion on it is. It literally is happening. The narrative we often hear is that drag shows are not about stripping. But I can actually pull up the Wikipedia entry for stripper and show you that this absolutely falls in line with one element of stripping. That is, dancing on stage fully clothed for money is stripping in some places. The idea that you have to be fully nude is not true. What does this mean? This is a perfect example of corporate mainstream America grooming children. And what do I mean by grooming? They are preparing a child for certain behaviors so that later in their life, it is normalized. They expect it or are used to it. Children are the future. That's not just some empty platitude. It's a fact. And right now, politically, we know that the left tends not to have children and the right does. If you take a look back in the 2000s, you can see that Republicans, typically conservatives, were having about 2 kids. Liberals were having about 1.5 on average. Surprise, surprise. 20 years later, Gen Z is slightly more conservative, though still very progressive. That means right now, if liberals are more likely to have abortions, more likely to have transgender children who eventually cannot have offspring, they're not going to have kids, and thus they need to make sure their ideology reaches your children. And that's the point. Grooming is happening in schools with books, with drag queen story hour, and with child drag shows. It's not just what Paramount Plus is doing. We also have Discovery Plus, launching a new show called Generation Drag, centered on the stories of 5 teenagers and their families. All of this is happening. And there's a curious thought here. If this is among the left and not among the right, and the right opposes it, substantially opposes it, and the left embraces it, you've got a cultural divide that cannot be mended. And then you can see, with the escalation in calls for violence or the accusations of violence, it seems like we're headed towards some kind of major collision. I don't know if you want to call it a civil war in this context or talking about children being groomed. But as they say, socialists don't have children, they have yours. So let's read the story and see what's going on with these kids. And let me show you what they mean by grooming, what grooming is. And yes, grooming is actually happening in schools and with your kids. If you're not paying attention, it will affect your family. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com and become a member to help support our work. As a member, you'll get access to exclusive segments from the Timcast IRL podcast Monday through Thursday at 11 p.m. And you'll be helping support our journalists and our website. We're hiring more journalists. We're hiring more staff. We're producing more shows. A lot of really cool stuff is happening right now. We got 2 big billboards in Times Square, right above Good Morning America. So everybody who works in those ABC buildings, yeah, that's Timcast IRL right above you. And that's all thanks to you. Perhaps, as I've stated before, a little vanilla in terms of culture jamming. It's just an ad, sure. We've got some cool plans coming up the next few months. So we're going to be doing some fun stuff to make bold statements that won't just market Timcast and the work I'm doing and the work we do here, but also make powerful cultural statements so that we can push back and win the culture war. Because if you don't, my friends, this is what you will get. So smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share this show with your friends. And if you've got people who don't believe you, not everybody wants to watch information that they will disagree with, but I'm going to at least break down my arguments. If you are someone on the left who has someone has shared this video with you, by all means, you can tell me my opinions are wrong. But let me show you the argument, because at the very least, if you see my argument, you'll be better equipped to argue against it when other people bring it up, right? Right. So let's get into the argument. What is grooming? What's happening? Here's an example from the post-millennial. Paramount Plus sponsors drag event where child dances on stage for money. At least 2 children are seen on stage with one dancing, dropping it low, and collecting money from a crowd of grown adults cheering the child on. The event, RuPaul's Dragcon 2020, took place in LA and welcomed over 60 featured drag queens from across the country. Featured talent, including drag queens such as Ahura, whose Instagram is ripe with videos of men wearing fake bouncy breasts, Madame LeQueer, and Trinity the Tuck. Tuck refers to the practice of men tucking their genitals to present as women. The video making its rounds online of Dragcon is disturbing to say the least. At least 2 children are seen on stage and one dancing, dropping it low. That's when, you squat. And collecting money from a crowd of grown adults cheering the child on. The other child dances with a drag queen. Just last week, a U.S. Air Force base canceled a scheduled drag story hour following pressure from an expose by the post-millennial. As alarming as the video from Dragcon is, even more concerning is the number of large brands and organizations which sponsors the event. Dragcon's website lists a number of sponsors, including a streaming service, Paramount Plus, makeup brand Anastasia Beverly Hills, Joann's Craft and Fabric Store, Out Here Sexual Health, and the Los Angeles Public Library. That is to say, my friends, public funding is going towards grooming. I know. If you're a liberal, you may be cringing when I say grooming, but I ask you simply to comment and tell me why I'm wrong. I'm not saying I am the arbiter of truth and morality. I'm giving you my opinions and thoughts. Don't like the word? I don't know what to tell you. Let me explain what I mean by grooming. First, we have the sponsors for this. You've got Wow Presents, you've got Fire Island, LA Public Library, Out Here, RuPaul, Golden Girls, Singer, Pretty Little Thing, Mickey's, Joanne, Anastasia, Paramount Plus. In the video, you can see this child is bouncing around and walks over and collects money from the crowd. Why? Why collect money from the crowd? Now, a serious question. This little boy is dancing, collecting money, running around as everyone cheers. He's probably very excited to be getting money from people as he does this. This is grooming. In what other context do people jump around dancing on stage and collect money from the audience as they wave it at them? I'm sure you can think of some. This may be grooming in any direction. Who knows? My point here is this is the seed of stripping. Don't believe me? There was one video that went viral several years ago of a young child named Desmond performing as Desmond is Amazing. Now, I refer to this as stripping outright, grooming children. The left and liberals argued it was not. It was a drag show, and drag shows have nothing to do with stripping, which is not true. First, let me pull up the Wikipedia article for stripping to explain to you that what you just saw from that little boy is stripping. Stripping is a colloquial term that typically refers to women removing their clothing. However, there are many circumstances where, in the greater context of these bars, women do not remove their clothing because it's not legal. So what they do is they dance on stage and you give them money. That's it. Of course, many of these women, go-go dancers, bikini dancers, then go on and go to other venues where they do remove their clothing. It's a grooming process. Let me explain. Wikipedia says during each set of one or more songs, the current performer will dance on stage in exchange for tips. Dancers collect tips from customers either while on stage or after the dancer has finished a stage show and is mingling with the audience. A customary tip is a dollar bill folded lengthwise and placed in the dancer's garter from the tip rail. Other common methods are insert the bill into the stripper's cleavage from the hand or mouth, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay. There's also private dances and private parties. But let's talk about the style of dress. While working, a stripper is not necessarily required to remove all of her or his clothing. Regardless of size, name, or location in the world, strip clubs can be full nude, topless, or bikini. For any type of strip club, there are exceptions based on the individual dancer and management. And clubs are classified based on typical performances, zoning, and advertised services. Go-go dancing, bikini dancing, topless and fully nude. In bikini performance, breasts and genital areas remain covered by revealing attire while providing services and entertainment. That's not always the case. Having known strippers, I actually reached out when the Desmond is Amazing story was going on to some people I knew who stripped, and they said there are some areas where the women can't even show cleavage, and they have to wear what looks like a cheerleader's outfit, but they're dropping low, they're dancing on stage, and men give them money. It's the same thing. Take a look at this. Drag kids trend is a train wreck about to happen from Restoring America. It's not just Paramount Plus. Last week, it was announced Discovery Plus will be launching a new show called Generation Drag, centered on the stories of 5 teenagers and their families as they prepare for a performance in Denver, Colorado, celebrating teen queens, kings, and non-binary performers ages 8 to 18. In the trailer, we see kids primping and posing in brightly colored wigs, skimpy outfits, and winged eyeliner. If you want to make an argument that that is inherently not stripping, okay, fine. I'm not talking about people just dressing up in outfits and then maybe doing like a modeling show. You know, when models dress up in weird clothing and walk the catwalk, people aren't flinging money at them. I actually know some top tier models as well who work for some of the biggest agencies in the world. When they do catwalk performances, or what do they call it? I forgot what they call it. But when they walk down wearing outfits, people aren't throwing money at them. There's something different. Now, I called it grooming, and you want to know what I mean by that. This, I mentioned it a little bit, but this little boy is going to grow up thinking that it's a normal thing for people to give you money to dance on stage. What's next? Well, maybe having done this, someone will say, if you ever need money, just let us know and we'll have you dance on stage. Cool. Then one day an older gentleman will say, do you want to make some more money? We don't have any drag shows, but we do have some, shirtless dancing stuff. Kid makes some money. They then say, if you ever need more, we've got other shows, like underwear stuff. Then eventually they say it's fully nude. It's grooming. The grooming process is to take a person and introduce them to something that's not that bad. Once they become accustomed to it, you escalate what you're doing. This is what's often lost in the political conversation. That's why this is grooming. So for those that are on the right, let me break it down for you. You have reasonable boundaries. Here's the way I explain it to people. When you first meet someone, you are neutral on them. Or maybe not. You might see someone who's got a big old MAGA thing on their chest, and maybe that means you like them or you don't like them. If you're on the left, you might see a big old MAGA flag with Trump on their shirt, and you lean towards not liking them. Will you strike them? No. You don't got to like somebody. You're not going to go up and hit them. That's weird. But you are leaning towards negative. How do you make this person lean towards positive if they don't like a Trump supporter? So we wouldn't use grooming in this context, but the same process applies. You introduce this person to someone wearing a MAGA shirt who's very nice and maybe helps pay their medical bill or something, and said, or their dog, here's a GoFundMe. Hey man, I'm really sorry about this. I know we don't get along, we don't agree, but I want to make sure I can be there for you because we're all in this together. All of a sudden now they have a positive experience. They say, those Trump supporters aren't so bad. They're misguided, but not so bad. They moved over a little bit. Your reasonable boundaries will gradually reset. Eventually, you do this. It's called love bombing in a political sense. You keep saying good things to someone every time they do something, and they like the encouragement, and they move more and more and more. The reasonable boundary is the position in which a person will not cross. So let me try and break it down. When you first meet someone, you will not hit them, and you might not even want to hug them, a full-on embrace. Because you're like, look, I don't know, I'll shake your hand. Maybe not even that. Nice to meet you. You're a stranger. You've got to take some actions before you're willing to give them a hug or you're willing to hurt them. Hurting is a bit further negative than hugging. So if you want to convince someone to give someone a hug, you need to move them so that their reasonable boundaries reset. Imagine it this way. Here's your reasonable boundaries. It's easier visually. Let's say on a scale of 1 through 10, you're at a 5. 1 is hitting, 10 is hugging. In order to get someone all the way to that 1, you need to get them to a 4, to a 3, to a 2, and then a 1, which means you need to generate hate. You need to give them more and more reason to hate. We're seeing this with media. When media writes an article saying so-and-so is racist, Trump is racist, the next day they write Trump is the worst racist, then Trump is literally Hitler, then Trump is worse than Hitler. That is effectively a grooming process. It's typically not how we refer to grooming. So now let's go back to this little kid. You take a little kid and they're neutral. They're shy. They don't want to strip. They wouldn't do anything like that. They'd be embarrassed to be seen in their underwear or something. You put them on stage. You give them money. Everyone claps and cheers. It's so good what you're doing. You're so brave. The kid likes it. It feels good. That resets their boundaries. Now, eventually, you say, wear this tank top instead. It's a little bit more revealing, but no big deal. It's just a dago, right? Then you reset their reasonable boundaries. Eventually, you get them so close, something obscene, you've groomed them to that process. This is what we are seeing now with what they're calling drag shows, when they have kids dance on stage, taking off their clothing and being given money. In this instance, Paramount wasn't having the kid remove his clothing, but Desmond is amazing, did remove his clothing. He would go on wearing a large outfit and then slowly pull off pieces of clothing in exchange for money, quite literally stripping. That is grooming kids. Here we go. This is from vtdigger.org. In Chester, a library's hesitation to host drag queen story hour sparks controversy. The reason why this is sparking controversy is a question around why drag queens are being presented to children. If you want to say it's art, it's fine, it's all that, why specifically have drag queens show up around kids? It's normalization. That in and of itself, make an argument for. If you're a conservative, you probably don't like it. If you're a liberal, you probably got no problem because it's not overtly sexualizing. It's just people wearing weird outfits. But it does reset the reasonable boundaries of these people and their children to accept what this behavior is. It does not mean the end result will be exploitation of children. Drag Queen Story Hour is to put drag queens in front of children so when those kids grow up, they don't have a negative reaction to it and it's normal to them. Conservatives probably don't like that. But that in and of itself, just reading a book, someone wears weird clothing you don't like and they read a book, it's whatever, right? But it will normalize much of the LGBTQ community because drag queens typically fall within it. That's the goal. That's it. Now, again, I didn't say that's going to a dark place. You may not like the cultural development, but this is why they do it. From NPR, accusations of grooming are the latest political attack with homophobic origins. And this is the inversion, the recoil. You see, people on the right are pointing out accurately that there is grooming going on in school. And I will show it to you. What the media and the left has to do is then say it's an attack, it's hateful, it's homophobic. The goal being get regular people seeing this to think that those who are claiming grooming is happening are lying or bad people. I got no issue for the most. Look, if you don't want your kids around drag queens at libraries, don't bring your kids to drag queen story hour. I don't think the government should be funding it, but the idea is normalizing certain cultural behaviors. If you don't like it, don't engage with it. If they were doing things untoward, like getting kids to dance on stage for money, that's where I'm like, hey guys, hold on there a minute. We got to think about what we're doing because you're crossing a line with these kids. And there's also drag queens who agree. But let me show you. Let me see if I can pull this one up. Okay, here we go. I'm just going to go right for it. Earmuffs. This one might get me in trouble. Actually, I can't read the headline. I honestly can't. I don't even know if I can show it on YouTube. I cannot show you what is in this book for children because YouTube would pull the video down. They say, the Texas Tribune, a coming-of-age memoir by a California writer has been seized upon by politicians who want greater control over the kinds of books available in Texas schools. How a young adult graphic scene touched off Texas's latest culture war. They say Kathy May was getting her 4 kids ready for another day at school in late October when she got an urgent voicemail from a friend. OMG, OMG, this book. Her friend said, alerting May to a book found by another parent in the library catalog of Keller Independent School District, where their kids go, called Genderqueer Memoir. I felt sick and disgusted, May said. Recalling text messages her friend sent her showing sexually explicit illustrations from the book. She was angry that any kid could access that kind of book in a public high school without their parents' knowledge. The 239-page graphic novel depicts Kobabi's journey of gender identity and sexual orientation. Quote, I can absolutely understand the desire of a parent to protect their child from sensitive material. I'm sympathetic to people who have had the best interest of young people at heart. Kobabi, the 32-year-old author based in California, said in an interview with the Tribune. I also want to have the best interest of young people at heart. There are queer youth at every high school, and those students, that's who I'm talking about, is the queer student who is getting left behind. May didn't read the book, but what she saw, a few pages of explicit illustrations depicting adult activities, was disturbing to her. It took less than a day for May and other parents to get the book removed from the district. May tweeted the same day that after the school officials had been notified, the book was removed from a student's hands. How are they responding to this on the left? You're getting this. For those that are just listening, it is an image showing a young elephant with blonde hair and two very angry elephant parents, a man and a woman. The child is holding a book that says frogs. It says, "We're learning about frogs in school." And the mother elephant is yelling and jumping. They're grooming the kids to be amphibians. If they were showing the child graphic sexual depictions and the parent said, "I don't want my kids seeing that," it's a bit different. You see, there's a recoiling here. They're trying to falsely represent what's happening. And I can't tell you exactly why. I can only say that what they're presenting falsely frames the argument. Typically, when parents get angry, there's several big stories. In Florida, a young girl tried to take her own life because the school secretly was transitioning her into a little boy and she was depressed. They didn't inform the parents. This precipitated the Parental Rights and Education Bill in Florida, which says that teachers must inform parents about what's going on with their kids. We also have in Loudoun County several books on critical race theory that say whiteness is bad or showing the devil, a demon tail, holding up a whiteness contract. Parents are upset about it naturally. And this book, Genderqueer, which actually shows graphic sexual depictions to such a degree that Amazon has rated it 18 and up only, yet it still finds its way in grade schools. This is what people are saying when they say grooming is happening. Adults are showing graphic imagery to children, encouraging it, saying it's normal, and those kids will then have their reasonable boundaries reset and move towards perversion. These things parents want banned. I saw this meme, the latest cartoon, on Facebook, and I asked the people who posted it what their thoughts were. In fact, I posted a link to the image from the book. Needless to say, they were furious. "Don't post that stuff on my page." Well, that's the book you were defending in grade school libraries. On more than one occasion, parents have gone to school meetings and read from these books and have had the board yell at them and say, "Stop speaking. You're out of line." Somehow, this stuff ends up in schools. Here's the sophistry. John Schwartz, my story, how I was groomed by my elementary school teachers. From encouraging me to read and write to nudging me to think for myself, their pernicious influence burdens me to this day. I present to you the juxtaposition so that you can decide for yourself. The Texas Tribune explained the book showed graphic adult depictions of adult activities between two people. It was graphically explicit. Is this a fair representation? When The Intercept writes, "I was being groomed because they were encouraging me to read and write," or is it sophistry? Are they attempting to manipulate you into think what is happening is fine or not happening at all? There was a tweet from Michael Malice. He said, "They're not trying to shut down your businesses. That's a conspiracy theory. They're not trying to take away your guns. It's a conspiracy. They're not teaching your kids critical race theory in schools. It's a conspiracy theory." They're all conspiracy theories. But all of these things have happened. If you read nothing but progressive and mainstream outlets, you are being misled. By all means, I encourage you to tell me I am wrong in the comments, but engage with the argument. Do you think, honest question, that it is okay for children to dance on stage with drag queens to take money from the audience? Okay, yes or no? Fine, answer the question. We may disagree on that, but that's allowed. Do you think it's okay for a child to come on stage and remove clothing like Desmond is Amazing did in exchange from tips from the audience? Yes or no? Just honestly answer the question. Personally, I think the answer is no to both of these things. Do you think that teachers in schools should be showing books depicting adult activities? Honest question. I think the answer is no. Now let's talk about critical race theory. You may engage with people on the right and not like their opinions if you are a liberal. That's fine. There's a lot of people on the right I don't like either. I do not believe that critical race theory should be banned from schools. I believe that teachers should not engage critical race praxis in education. There's a difference. I think it's fine if you want to have Kimberly Crenshaw's critical race theory book in a school to critically assess the merits of the arguments. It's actually a very important thing to do. What I don't like is what's called critical praxis. And this is when you take the teachings of critical race theory and apply it to math. Here's an example. You could write a train leaves Pittsburgh traveling at 50 miles an hour, and another train leaves Cleveland at 70 miles an hour. They're 300 miles apart. At which point will they collide, right? Typical old school math word problem. Critical race praxis would give you a different math problem. It would say, Jerome has been stopped by a police officer 17 times this week, where Walter has only been stopped 3 times. What percentage of police stops affect the black community over the white community? That's praxis. It's when you apply the teachings of critical race theory or the ideology of intersectionality into a problem. These things exist. Do you think that's right or wrong? You may have no opinion. That's fine. Personally, I think it's wrong. I don't want critical race praxis taught, and I don't want Christian praxis taught. I think kids should be taught to think critically. But maybe it's no wonder they show you these things and then claim it's not actually happening. That I was being groomed to read and write. Sure, that's fine. I don't care about that. And maybe you'll encounter right-wing sophists who will manipulate and lie for political power. I don't like the Republican Party. I like maybe 10 politicians, if that. What I like is what's true and what's really happening. And what's really happening is that when you have children dance on stage for money, this is stage 1 of what may be grooming. Now, maybe it's not intentional. Maybe they didn't bring these kids out to groom them, but why is the audience throwing money at them? It is a shift in culture. Now, maybe liberals are fine with it. Conservatives certainly are not. Where does this lead us? What do you think will happen in 10 or 20 years? Let's say 10 years, when these little boys, they're in their 20s, and it turns out they're all dancing on stage for money and getting naked. Conservatives are going to be very much opposed to that. It probably will not be normalized because this is too far outside of the reasonable boundaries of the right. Throughout the past 100 years, it would seem that this process of the greater grooming phenomenon, or social engineering as some would describe it, mass social engineering, we have seen conservatives slowly drift leftward. Donald Trump, for instance, is the first president in U.S. history to support gay marriage before being elected. Isn't that crazy? That's a fact. Barack Obama opposed gay marriage when he was campaigning to run for president. The Republican far-right, whatever you want to call him, MAGA guy, actually supported gay marriage. You see, the problem for the left right now is they've shifted way too far, way too fast. They have made tremendous strides in gaining control in terms of what their political cultural values are. As I stated, Donald Trump is far right. You say, yeah, well, he supported gay marriage entering office. The first Republican to do so, Obama didn't even do it, as I mentioned. But now the Democrats and many on the left are saying Donald Trump is far right, and the far right is moving further right, when in actuality, the New York Times actually showed, according to their manifesto, they've actually shifted slightly leftward, just slightly. Now, the Pew research shows they've moved a little bit to the right, but only a little bit. Depends on what you're looking at. The fact is, if Republicans are going to be defending trans people like Blair White, but not the entirety of the trans ideology, and they're going to be defending gay marriage, they've moved leftward. That's reality. The trans debate could not even happen 10 years ago. I campaigned on behalf of the Human Rights Campaign, a leading LGBT nonprofit. One of the big issues was that there was a bill, I think it was called ENDA, the Employment Non-Discrimination Act. There was anger from many LGBTQ groups. They said that one group, the Human Rights Campaign, was okay with a bill that would not defend the trans community. And they said, no, it's all or nothing. But the HRC said, we'll take what we can get. Back then, transgender rights were so outside of the mainstream that even mainstream LGBTQ organizations were not willing to publicly defend them. And they were willing to accept certain legislation. I should say they were willing to publicly defend them because LGBT was in there. But they weren't. They were willing to take concessions. There was not a great public debate on transgenderism because gay marriage was not won yet. It wasn't until 2014. Today, everything's shifted once again leftward. If the left didn't shift so far so fast, or more importantly, if the left didn't embrace what some would describe as lascivious behavior, they'd probably win the argument. When you're talking about transgender affirming care and that's it, well, then you're probably going to have a hard cultural argument. But when you show children on stage dancing for money, it now becomes an argument about grooming. And the reality is, many people on the left probably are not okay with it. My question is, why defend it? Because I know they do, because when I brought up Desmond is amazing and said, yo, this is stripping. What Desmond was doing was not just grooming, it was stripping. He was wearing clothes, going on stage, pulling off piece by piece, and then taking money. You do not need to get naked to be a stripper. He was stripping his clothes off for money. And the left defended it. And they said the right was making it up and the right was targeting children. That's the problem. Tribalism has become so entrenched on the left that they would outright deny. And they've gone nuts. I'm sorry. Showing adult activities in a middle school library is not banning, getting rid of that is not banning books. It's banning adult content. We've always been like, children shouldn't read that. There was this period where there was a LGBTP. People were trying to add child abusers to LGBT. Well, they say MAP, minor attracted person. They still try it. The left said it was a troll campaign and that it was fake and they're trying to smear LGBTQ people. But it is a reality. There are people who are trying to entertain this. Snapchat had a filter that said love has no age. What is that supposed to mean? They were talking about LGBTQ issues when they said this. I think they ultimately removed it. This is the direction it's going. You are going to shock middle America to its core when they see these things. So I can only put it this way. If you're on the right, if you're a conservative, or you just outright disagree with this, whatever your political position is, you need to share it and let people know. And by all means, tell me what I'm wrong about. You can disagree with me, but tell me what I'm wrong about. I've shown you the parts of the video. I've shown you the Wikipedia entry for stripping. This is all just a simple logical argument. And despite my opinion, I am not asserting a moral stance in what I'm showing you, but perhaps my framing is biased. So you tell me what I got wrong and comment below. And if you don't think I got it wrong, share it with your friends and ask them, did Tim get anything wrong about what's happening? There are some books that are being banned that shouldn't be banned. There are some books that I think are graphic sexual depictions that should be. But does that mean I'm for all around book banning? No. Maybe just have an adult section, and once someone's at high school and turn 18, it's like, all right, you can read it now. Or maybe the school just shouldn't be paying for this stuff. I'm not going to pretend to be the arbiter of morality or have all the answers. But if you ignore this and don't engage on the merits, you will lose. The Democrats who don't know this is happening, you're losing. Same thing with the gun argument. If you can't argue for what an assault weapon is, you will not be able to win that argument. And that's why 36 states now permit openless carry. They permit permitless open carry. There, I got it. So tell me what you think. Either way, I think all of this is ultimately going to lead to a Republican sweep, among other things, in November. But we'll see. I could be wrong. Next segment's coming up at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimcastIRL. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.